Oh, so you're a Sonic fan, huh? Okay then. Name every single line of code in Sonic Adventure. Yeah, that's what I thought. Until the actual source code is out there, it's an impossible task. But that hasn't stopped others from at least trying to recreate Sonic's character controller from these games. Just look at the countless amount of 3D fan games that attempt to recreate the adventure physics. I mean, I can't blame them. Sonic's character controller from Adventure 1 and 2 is kind of the best one there is. In my opinion, no other game has even gotten close to how immaculate Sonic handles in these games. However, unless you really understand how this game works under the hood, knowing what's truly going on is a guessing game at best. But honestly, that's kind of where the fun lies. Trying to reverse engineer how the physics work just based off of observations. It's the ultimate game design exercise, and it's exactly what we'll be doing today. Digging deep into the inner workings of the physics of Sonic Adventure. Come on, we all know you love this stuff. It's the exact reason you're subscribed. You are subscribed, right? Good, and make sure to leave a like too while you're at it, it really helps me out. Anyways, welcome to chaomix, and today we'll be attempting to recreate the character controller from the Sonic Adventure games. Let's recreate the physics from the Sonic Adventure games. To do this, we'll need to pay close attention to how Sonic interacts with the environment and make some guesses on how his movement might be calculated. It may surprise you, but a lot of these quote-unquote physics are actually extremely faked. I mean, that goes for any video game, honestly. It's all smoke and mirrors hiding the true messy and case-by-case way the game handles Sonic's interactions with the environment. You'll definitely see this as we go deeper and deeper into developing our character controller. So let's see if we can figure out how this all works. Luckily, I'm pretty familiar with these games and have a good feel for how they control. But before we do that, we'll have to set up our project in Unity, my game engine of choice. Let's just come up with a nice title and... there we go. We're really doing it, boys. The next Sonic Adventure title is finally upon us. Now that we're in Unity, I can do some basic setup to prep for all the gameplay scripts I'll need to make. We're obviously at least going to need a floor for testing Sonic's movement, so let's make a green checkerboard plane. Ah yes, exactly like Green Hill Zone. I can already hear Sega on their way to hire me for the next Sonic game. We'll add this basic capsule to represent the player for now. We'll eventually add in Sonic's actual model and animations later on. Okay, this is kinda boring. Let's at least spice it up a bit with some basic shapes. Ah yes, he's perfect. Absolutely perfect. Now we can begin programming. First, we'll need to program some basic movement. In the Sonic Adventure series, Sonic has what's called momentum. Yes, the thing that makes Sonic's gameplay so incredibly unique. This means that Sonic gradually builds up speed when starting a run, but it also means that he gradually loses speed when coming to a stop. There's a few other cool things momentum can do, but we'll talk about this later. But basically, it's inertia, which in real life is extremely complicated and has a ton of factors that mathematically play into it. But lucky for us, we aren't calculating real-world physics. Remember, as I said earlier, a lot of these physics are actually faked. So how does this all work in the adventure games? Well, when you begin holding down a direction on the controller, Sonic's speed begins increasing by a certain rate. When you let go, he'll begin slowing down at another rate. Something I noticed is that Sonic slows down way faster than he speeds up, and this is probably to make it so it doesn't feel like he's sliding on ice. So we'll need to make a few new variables on our player controller. Current speed, which keeps track of how fast Sonic is going, an acceleration rate, which is the rate that Sonic speeds up, and a deceleration rate, which is the rate that Sonic slows down. Another thing we can notice is that Sonic's speed seems to reach a certain peak speed when running on flat ground. This is different from Sonic's max speed, as Sonic should be able to surpass top speed as he goes downhill. So let's make a variable called top speed, which is the speed value Sonic will accelerate to before factoring in things like slopes. And then max speed, which will be the absolute highest amount our speed will be able to get to. We'll clamp our current speed variable to this number, meaning it'll never surpass it. I know Sonic's supposed to be the fastest thing alive, but we don't want Sonic to be too fast. It doesn't exactly make for a very good game if you can't control it. We'll also have to make sure that Sonic rotates in the direction that we're pointing him in. We'll do this by rotating his player model based on the control stick's direction. And just like that, we have movement. Oh, that is not right. Hold on. I'm a professional game developer, I swear. Alright, after a bit of tinkering, now we have movement. Very basic movement, but for now, this will do. Alright, you know what? Let's import Sonic's model after all. Man, all this programming is tough work. And unfortunately, if you want to make games, there's not too many ways around it. If only there was a way for me to learn and get better without it feeling like a chore. Well, lucky for us, that's where today's sponsor comes into play, Boot.dev. Boot.dev is designed to fight the biggest enemy of learning, boredom. The platform is like an RPG game for coding. Yes, you earn XP, level up, and even compete for top spots on a global leaderboard. It gamifies the learning process, making every lesson feel like a quest in a video game. What stands out to me is how Boot.dev emphasizes practical learning. You're not just passively watching videos, you're actively writing tons of code. And as we all know, there's no better way to learn programming than to get your hands dirty with real projects. On Boot.dev, you'll master back-end web development from start to finish, focusing on Python and Go languages. And the best part? It's completely at your own pace and 100% online. Also, if you ever get stuck, there's an active Discord community ready to help. Trust me, it's like having a group of friends who code right at your fingertips. And let's talk about the future. Programming, especially back-end development, is not just intellectually rewarding. According to Stack Overflow, back-end devs in the US had a median salary of over $100,000 in 2023. Plus, many of these roles offer the flexibility to work remotely. Not too shabby if you ask me. Get ready to take your coding skills to the next level. Use the link in my description and code chaomix for 25% off your first order. Whether it's just for a month or an entire year, it's a fantastic deal. Huge thank you to Boot.dev for sponsoring this video, and with all that being said, let's continue with today's episode. Let's program a basic jump next. When Sonic jumps, you're able to tap the jump button for a short jump and hold it for a full jump. This is called a variable jump height because it depends on how long you hold the button. So we'll make it so that if you're touching the ground and press the jump button, you'll initiate a jump. Let's make another variable for the jump force, then multiply this by the upward direction. We'll make a minimum jump height though, so even if you tap the button for just a frame, you'll still go at least a minimum distance. Once you're actually jumping, you can either let go of the button to shorten your jump or hold it down until the maximum height. We'll also make a separate fall player state because it's completely possible for Sonic to just walk off a ledge and go airborne without even jumping. Also, Sonic controls differently in the air than he does on the ground. In general, he's a lot slower. So we'll need to make separate air variables for acceleration, deceleration, and top speed and set them at lower values. And there we go. Come on. Alright, I went in and did some more tinkering to fix it. We now have a basic jump and fall state. I think it's about time we imported Sonic's animation so we can get a better feel for how this is going to look in action. Sonic has several running animations he cycles through when he builds up speed, and they all depend on how fast he's currently going. Luckily, Unity can keep track of all of our variables and feed them into the animator so it knows exactly how fast we're going. So we'll set up his idle animation when his speed is 0, a walk for when he's going slow, a jog for when he picks up a bit more speed, a run for when he's approaching his top speed, a dash for when he's near his top speed, and an animation called Jet for when he exceeds his top speed. We'll also make sure he has a falling and jump animation for when he's in the air. We can also utilize his jump animation later on for when we add the spin dash. It's pretty much the same thing. And yes, spoiler alert, we're 100% adding Sonic Adventure spin dash. Make sure to watch till the end because it's absolutely insane. But you'd be surprised how much of an impact animation has on the game feel of the controls. Because just like that, despite controlling exactly the same, our character controller feels so much better just because of the added animations. Anyways, let's go ahead and import a level from Sonic Adventure while we're at it. We'll definitely need something a bit more complicated than this flat surface to expand our character controller. I like using this rip of Speed Highway because it has this huge hill and loop-de-loop right at the beginning that we can use to test our more advanced movement. Alright, now that we got all the basic stuff out of the way, it's time to overly complicate everything with rotations. So far, we've only been working with movement on a flat surface. But the thing that makes Sonic's gameplay so incredibly unique is how he aligns himself and follows the ground's rotation. This is exactly what makes it so that he can go through things like loop-de-loops. However, different games handle this in different ways. In a lot of fan games, and even Sonic Frontiers, they have what I like to call vomit camera. This is when the camera rotates along with Sonic as he rotates with the ground and even goes through loop-de-loops. It makes programming Sonic's movement along slopes and loop-de-loops incredibly easy because the camera is always aligned with Sonic. Forward is always forward, left is always left, right is right, and so on. But there's a huge drawback. It's the reason I call it vomit cam, because, yeah. It's really disorienting and becomes too easy to lose your sense of direction as a player, and it can be straight up nauseating. So I'm making the very deliberate decision to not include vomit cam in my game. It'll be like how the adventure games do it. which for the most part has the camera just upright. This is admittedly much harder to code since when you go through a loop-de-loop, at some point your inputs become crossed. Forwards suddenly becomes backwards, and this can cause a ton of problems if you don't apply your movement correctly. This is something I had a bit of a hard time to figure out, but here's the solution I finally came up with. What we want to do is find the normal of the ground. A normal is the perpendicular direction of a plane like the ground. So if the ground is flat, the normal sticks straight up, or the normal of a wall sticks out on its side, for example. We want to align Sonic to this normal. This is easy enough to do. We just set Sonic's up rotation to the normal of the ground, which is something Unity can easily detect when Sonic is touching the ground. But as Sonic continues to rotate towards the 90-degree point of a slope, where it essentially becomes a wall, our inputs get crossed and he gets stuck. This is where we need to take our actual input and make sure it's also rotating along the ground normal. That way, as we go through the loop-de-loop, our forward direction will naturally rotate to become our backwards direction without even moving the control stick. This is my attempt at kind of visualizing the process. There's a ton of other ways to do this, I'm sure, but this was the simplest way I can think of that actually worked. Oh yeah, one more rotation I'll be programming in is going to make it so that Sonic rotates towards the downward direction of the slope he's standing on if there's no directional input from the player. This will be useful in just a second. Alright, now that we have Sonic actually rotating with the slopes correctly, we can now factor this into our speed calculations. In most Sonic games, when Sonic goes downhill, he's able to exceed his top speed. Conversely, going uphill has him go much slower. So on top of our regular acceleration and deceleration formula, we can make two separate formulas to adjust speed based on the severity of the slope's rotation. If going downhill, we'll multiply our slope rotation by a new variable called slope assistance to increase our speed. And if going uphill, we'll multiply our slope rotation by another new variable called slope drag to decrease our speed. Also, this way, we can separately control the strength of each direction, downwards or upwards. Oh, and obviously, the steeper the slope, the stronger the influence from both of these formulas. So Sonic will now be able to dynamically change speed based on the steepness of the slope. And it works. And because we set it up earlier, if we stop moving, Sonic will now begin to rotate towards the downward direction of the slope, and these formulas will take over and he'll begin to move downhill automatically. Awesome. What's really funny though is that if we go up this loop-de-loop and come to a stop, we'll keep sticking to it. So unless we want to be like Sonic 06, we're gonna have to find a way for Sonic to de-stick from the wall. It's actually extremely easy. The fact that this made it into the final game of Sonic 06 is insanely baffling. I'll make it so that if you're on a slope greater than 90 degrees, so think a wall or being upside down, and if you're below a certain speed, something really slow, you'll de-stick. And in order to actually de-stick, all we'll do is disable Sonic's ground detection for a moment. There we go. Oh god, Sonic, no! We can now run on walls properly and actually de-stick if we fall below a certain speed. Hell yeah, this is truly happening. Let's complicate our jumps a bit by adding in some more rotations. Jumping on a flat ground has Sonic jump straight up, but doing so on a sloped surface will have Sonic jump at the same angle as the ground. So all we do is make it so that Sonic's initial jump force is aligned with the ground normal to send him in that direction. Another thing the adventure games are known for is slope jumping. This is where jumping on an upward slope with a ton of speed sends you jumping higher than if you were to do it on flat ground, especially if you do it from a spin dash. Conversely, jumping from a downward slope will actually decrease your jump height. What I'll do is add an extra force on top of the jump force that detects how fast you were going at the time just before leaving the ground. It'll also detect your velocity on the y-axis, aka up and down, so that if you were going downhill, aka a negative value on the y-axis, it'll actually subtract from your jump, causing it to be shorter. With this, we can have a dynamic jump height based on slopes, just like the adventure games. Yes, looks good. This is going to be very important for what we're finally about to program. What's a Sonic game without a spin dash? Well, a lot of them actually. But not if you're an adventure game. Spin dashing and the adventure games go together like peanut butter and jelly. It's a very important tool for making these games so fun. It works differently in each game, but for this project, I'll be modeling it after the spin dash from Sonic Adventure 1, aka the spam dash. In the first adventure game, you're able to repeatedly mash the spin dash button to rapidly build up speed. It's a great time, especially when you get good at spin dash jumping off slopes to skip huge portions of the level. The spin dash can be held down to charge its strength. When charging, the player rapidly comes to a stop. It isn't an instant stop though, as we can see Sonic slightly sliding after activating the spin dash charge. But the longer you hold down the button, the stronger your burst of speed when you release it. From my observations, it seems like getting the spin dash to full strength takes about 1/3 of a second. So once we release our charge button, we'll set our speed equal to whatever speed we already had at the time of release, plus our charged spin dash speed. So based on how quickly you release the spin dash from 0 seconds to 1/3, it'll scale the strength of it. But even a spin dash that's just tapped for a single frame still gives you a boost, so there's gonna have to be a set base speed to this. When we're actually in the spin dash, we'll have to disable our acceleration based on controller input so we don't actually gain speed by pressing forward. Because we're rolling, we're purely letting our slope formulas take control of our speed. We can still steer though, and we'll also make it so that our acceleration off of slopes is higher than when simply running on foot. We'll also make our deceleration slower to make the spin dash a bit more slidey. Let's also make it so that if you press the spin dash button again while in a spin dash, you exit. That way you can chain spin dashes into each other in quick succession, hence the spam dash. And there we go, we have a functioning spin dash. But I just gotta make sure, does our slope jumping formula play nice with our spin dash? Oh yeah, it sure does. And it's absolutely beautiful. You can even perform this exact same skip in Speed Highway. Sonic Adventure 3 is here, baby. We did it. And there we have it, a basic Sonic Adventure styled character controller. This was made by simply observing Sonic's controls as I played it in-game. I don't actually know any of the code used to make Sonic move in these games, so I'm sure it's all handled pretty differently. But when it comes to the player experience, the code doesn't technically matter as long as it feels good to play. There's a ton I can improve on for sure, like the jump can feel a bit janky at times. But this was a fun project, and I'm sure I'll come back to it to improve it over time. So if you'd like to see me add more features in the future, the best way to let me know is by leaving a comment below on what you'd like to see next. If you ever plan on getting into game design, doing exercises like this is extremely important. Breaking down how you think something works and then trying to recreate it yourself is probably the best way to improve your game design brain. And listen, I ran into hours of issues that I didn't even show on this video, but every feature implemented, every problem solved, improves your skill, even if it does take almost an entire day just to get the jump working. But, you know, it's fine. Anyways, that's gonna be it for today's video. If you liked it, make sure to leave a fat like and subscribe for even more way past cool Sonic content such as this. In the comments below, let me know if you'd like to see me continue this character controller and what features you'd like to see implemented next. Huge thank you to my amazing channel members, and with all that being said, I hope everyone has a fantastic day. Peace.